All right. Well, I'm going to try and give you guys a fairly quick introduction to Zotero, and then because that you're going to need that to understand what we have as a database for folks to use for telehealth. So I'll quickly run through Zotero, and then I'll talk a little bit about what my graduate student from last year did to implement a database in Zotero that's focused on telehealth. So I am going to share my screen here and walk you through a few things. And please, please interrupt me if you have questions. I'm going to, I just don't know how much I can assume. And so I'm going to try and do this fairly quickly, but on the other hand, I don't want to just blow over it so that nobody understands. So some of you probably went to school, college, graduate school, at a time when we did note cards to write papers, and maybe you even had a class that taught you how to do that. I never did, or if I did, I definitely did not pay attention. But about the time that I was in college and graduate school, actually, database managers or reference managers started to become a thing. There were several of them out there. Reference Manager was one piece of software, and this is back when we would buy software on disks, and slide them into our computers and install software that way before there was even an internet. But well, a reference manager or a reference, I'll just call it a reference manager, is a program that is basically a highly specialized database for references, for literary references, just like the citations at the end of your paper. It stores that information and then formats it in various ways and lets you do handy things with it. So, so for a long time there were just reference manager software sites or software pieces of software out there, and you could buy them. And I don't know the year actually, but a ways into that process, the folks at Zotero, which was started by a bunch of librarians under grant funding. Corporation for Digital Scholarship funded Zotero, but it was an application that was originally driven by a group of librarians and data archivists who wanted to build a reference manager and wanted to make it open source, so that people could use it for free, and it grew up along with the internet, so that it's been web-based for almost since its inception, I would imagine. What Zotero does, and I'm gonna close the window here that I didn't want to close. What Zotero does is provide the company or the project. It's not really a company, it's a project of a number of people, but they provide a piece of software that you can download, a desktop version of Zotero, and then they provide web storage like Dropbox or Box or or Google, someone like that, but the storage is specifically for your collections of references. And you can access, so when you build a database, you can store it locally on your computer with all your references in there, or you can connect it up to a database that's stored in the cloud on Zotero.org and see your databases, or see your references there as well. They've also done a cute little thing here on the web, just in case this is of use to anyone. I'll show you this Zotero Bib they have now, where if you've got an article, say you're searching, you're zooming around, you've got an article, and you decide, hey, I like this one here, cost analysis of telebehavioral health. Every article now, every journal reference has a DOI number or a number like this that is used to refer to this article. You can see it's also down here, DOI and a PMID, both of these. These are like, they're like ISBN numbers for books. It's a unique number or string of characters for this that indicates this article. And I can do something like this, paste that into Zotero Bib, and it will find that article and it will add it to my bibliography here. And it will let me choose what the format is of this bibliography. And then it will let me download, export it to the clipboard, etc. It's just got a little web-based tool. So this is a tiny little web-based tool to create a bibliography if you need one for a research paper, all right? And I'm showing this first because that's the tiny version. That's the little tiny version of what Zotero does. And it's cool. You can also put in URLs or ISBN numbers or DOIs and PMIDs, I said. There are various other kinds of unique numbers that articles and references have that you can put in. Websites have URLs. You can put any of that in there. Zotero will figure out how to cite it and add it to a little database. So that's a little tool that it does. But the real thing that it does, the real desktop application, I will show you. I'll share my screen and show you what that is. So this is the desktop version of Zotero running on my desktop. And it has a number of things that I'll point out. First is that everything that I have is under this My Library, and this is a huge long list of all kinds of citations that I have on my local computer. And then when I put things into my library, I can add them to collections, and I can add them to multiple collections. So it's not just, these aren't subdirectories really, but they're collections. So that all of the articles in my library, this big thing, that refer to general healthcare, I've slid over into general healthcare, and I've stored them there. And the way you would do that is just take it and you can just slide it over. Can you just drop it in there? No, you can't. Well, no, that's different than I remember. Anyway, it creates directories like this, and you can put them into collections down here by tagging them. What it also does, so this is local stuff. So this is stuff that I've stored on my local computer and I've organized with Zotero. But what it also does is, these are my group libraries that are online. And I did one back when I was at UMTRC on Medicaid telehealth for a couple of papers that I wrote. And then this one here is the one that that Amelia just did a few months ago. What Zotero that's running on my desktop is doing right now is it's linking to that online database, and it's syncing it up so it has a local copy, but my local copy is synced to that web copy. So if anyone makes any changes to the web copy, it gets propagated down to my local synced copy. And likewise, if I make any changes, it'll sync back up. So that this is a way for people to share collections, share libraries. And so that's what we've done when Amelia got all these references from Michael in Northeast. She added them all into Zotero. She didn't have to type them in. We did it all kind of automatically and electronically as much as possible. But she created this online database. And if you're running Zotero locally, it will sync up. Now, most of you aren't going to run Zotero locally. So the other way that you have access to this is by, and I'll share this again, is by going to, dang Zoom control bar keeps getting in the way, going to Zoteroorg and going to groups. And a group is what we created. It's a collection that is stored online, And what we can do is search for groups there. This one, Amelia just called GP Track telemedicine or something, but if you put in GP Track and search, you'll find it. It's having to search them all because I'm not logged in here. So this may take just a minute. It's also having to compete with Zoom for bandwidth right now. I'm going to say you can trust me on that, and I'm going to go ahead and log in, and it'll show the group that way, and then I can tell you what it is. So if you notice, if you remember, I've gone to the My Library tab. This is the same set of references that I have on my local computer. So they're mirrored up on the web, but it's just the top set, that set that I had locally. The sets that I had below are in my Groups tab, the GP Track, Telehealth, and the Upper Midwest. These are both of those groups that I had further down on the left-hand side of my Zotero window. And they're also syncing up to the web. This is all, I mean, Zotero in that sense is functioning just as a browser or a client for a web database. And if you look at that GP Track telehealth library, what you find is these are all of the references that Amelia put up here. And again, they're all in this library group. And then each of these is a collection, a subset, based on topics that I think Michael probably originally came up with. So they're put into these categories. So you can go in there, and these are just lists of references. You can click on any of these and see title and abstract, the journal and publication, and then there's always a link, and I'm going to Control Shift and see if I can get this to open. There's always a link to the PubMed or whatever reference, whatever resource it is, so you can find it online. And this is the original BMJ Open version website of that link. And then if it's available here, I can download it just like I could if I had browsed to this. And since it's BMJ Open, the full text is available here. But also, when it's available, let me see if this is going to work. Amelia had attached the articles whenever they were available. So there you see it in PDF form. And you can pull it right off the web if it's open and available. There are a lot of articles that are in that in those collections on those online groups that are behind a paywall, and I can get to them. Amelia could get to them because we had University of Minnesota access to all of those online databases. But Zotero, smart as it is, will not let you get to those resources if you don't also have access of some kind to those databases. It'll get you to the abstract page, which is the public page, but it won't let you pull down a PDF or store a PDF that's behind a paywall. So, which is all fine. I mean, if you need copies, if you find something and you really want a copy, let me know, and I can figure out how to get you a copy that is compliant with reasonable use rules. But we just can't post them on the internet and have people downloading them, and Zotero doesn't allow that either. So that's a quick, well, where did it go now? That's a quick little look at how Zotero works. There are also a couple of other cool little things about it that I'll just kind of throw in here. One is that they have browser extensions that allow you to, like I have the browser extension here, and it changes, the little icon changes depending on where I am in the web. But if I'm on a page for an article, it will look like this. And if I click on that extension right there, it will save that reference to whatever group I'm asking it to save to. And then that shows up on my desktop version, and then ultimately gets synced up to the cloud as well. There's 100 little things that you can do with it if you manage a lot of resources, you manage a lot of citations, or want to access any of these groups that we've set up. You can also access all of this, obviously, without having an account at all. Well, I can't say that. In order to get access to this account, you have to send an email to Amelia, which is the group owner, which you can do from this website. You can contact the group owner. Let's see where it says that. And you can ask for access. Of course, I have access already, so it's not going to give me that button. But if you go online and find this group, GPTrack Telehealth, and oh wait, did I just see it there? Probably I have access to manage members, but you won't. Public closed membership just means that it's available on the web, but you can only get it with a membership. You can't not everybody can see it. So if you want access to that library, you'll have to email me and I'll forward it on to Amelia, and you can get in there. And then you can poke around in there. This is a great online resource. We had talked when we first presented this, we talked about maintaining it, and I think that would be a great idea. I think it'd be great if we could get a graduate student. It's a great thing for a graduate student to do, just because they're exploring and getting used to working in the publication, in the literature anyway. So having them keep this up to date would be a nice little task for a graduate student. And hopefully we can do something like that going forward. I don't have a graduate student right now, but if others of you do, and you want to put them in touch to take a look at something like this, maintaining something like this, we can certainly set that up. We're not trying to keep a monopoly on accessing it. And in fact, when you join the group, this is another thing that's a little bit tricky right now. When you join the group, you have the ability to use this and edit it. So somebody could get in here and delete a bunch of stuff, or say, I don't like that one, or I'm going to change this, and make changes that would ultimately, affect other people's ability to use it. So it really does, in order to maintain this and keep it useful, it really needs to be accessed sort of in a way that you know what you're doing, and you're not gonna accidentally, probably not accidentally, delete the whole thing, but you could delete individual references, or you could change names and data fields for these things if you had edit access, which would then impact other people's ability to find it. So here I'm editing this particular entry. Best thing to do is get out of there and not edit it. Okay, well, that's a quick introduction to Zotero and the online GPTrack telehealth group that we set up. Are there questions or discussion about this? What else do you want to know about this resource, or how to use it, or whatever?
Jonathan, this is Kathy. A lot of times when I'm trying to help somebody, I'll do a search to find articles that prove a point. But if I can't give them the article, I can only give them the abstract or the reference, right? For some of those that are not publicly available.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll be up to them to figure out how to get into the article. Is that what you generally do?
Yeah, that's the sort of universally approved system of getting access. Within academia, things are a whole lot looser.
Yeah.
Sharing things, and um, the legal the legal principle of fair use means that, for example, I can go to a library and get a journal that I don't own. I can make a photocopy of it and walk out with a photocopy of that article. So similarly, and I could give that photocopy to somebody else. Similarly, if I go online and download or print a few articles and send a few articles to people just to share for research or for purposes like you're talking about, I think that falls squarely within fair use. The problem comes when you post PDFs on your website or whatever, so that people can just come by and pull them down and use them without purchasing access to what's obviously copyrighted material. So we just have to be careful about that. But I don't mind printing copies. I'm sure other people and several of us in the TRCs have access to some of this. So if there are a few things that would be particularly helpful, you can let me know. I don't know if that's where you were going with the question, but that's often where it ends up going.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I think too, if there were tables or other resources in published materials that we as TRCs would pull together, and with good citations and all of that, where to find the original, we could use materials like this as well too, if we wanted to put together a white paper or put together some sort of fact sheet that involved citing resources in published materials. We could do that too. As this is, and also kind of to your point that you were talking about, Kathy, when people say, okay, I want to know whether telemedicine in a school setting for pediatric mental health conditions, especially anxiety, is effective. That's a pretty extensive search, but it's certainly searchable, and you could certainly find a dozen, half a dozen, whatever articles on it. I guess to me, that seems like I don't think we as TRCs really have the role to be the librarian. We are librarians, but to say, okay, I found these 6 articles, I'll print them out for you and send them to you. I feel like it's along the lines of an article or 2 that are important that cite a lot of others, and we could do something along those lines.
Okay.
So Jonathan, this is Kathy Wimberly. I've got like a whole library of stuff in Dropbox of articles that I have collected over time. I would love to dump them all into Zotero, but obviously I have a different naming scheme for my folders than you do, and a lot of folders that you don't have folders created for. So I'm trying to think of what is the best way, I guess, to do that. And if I'm sure that we all probably have those types of folders as well. So, is there an efficient or effective way of kind of putting it all into one space?
Boy, I think the short answer to that is no. In the sense of efficient, I don't think so. For one thing, well, let's see if we can find. For one thing, I wonder if even things like keywords are good enough for doing something like that? You know, do we sort things by keywords, or do we? I mean, how do we categorize what is? I mean, how do we categorize what would go into what categories? What categories we even have? The curation folks went around and around on this for a bit. We didn't get too deeply into it, but when you've got thousands, literally thousands of articles, hundreds at least, that we could categorize, is some, you know, do you categorize something as pediatrics, or you categorize it as cardiology when it's pediatric cardiology, or, you know, is it mental health pediatrics or school-based when it's a school-based telebehavioral health program, or is it all of those? And how do you create that hierarchy, or that nomenclature, or whatever, that typology? Now, that being said, it could be an ongoing project of ours to maintain something like this. I'm not sure that I don't know, we'd have to discuss something like that, because ultimately what a reference manager is good for, at least in my experience, is when you as an expert collect resources, and then you know what you have, and you kind of know where to find it and how you've categorized it, so that you can cite it in a paper or cite it when you need to. That's the usefulness of it. To hand somebody else, even something like this, to hand people this, people aren't going to necessarily know where to find stuff. So it's challenging to make it useful, or to organize things in such a way that anybody can just kind of show up and find what they need. Google Scholar is a much better way to do that than putting stuff in folders online. So I guess I'm not quite sure yet what the benefit is, other than if we were to work on a project together to try and pull some of this stuff together, Zotero would be a great way to just throw references into categories that we want, and end up with a collection of stuff that we can use and know what's there, and know how to manage it. So I suppose that I'm pointing to the idea that we as TRCs could say, okay, we want to keep a set of no more than 30 to 50 seminal articles on these 5 to 10 to 12 topics. And we want to know what's there and keep them up to date with what's new, and only have these 30 to 50 or whatever. Then I think that would be really something that we could all store together and use together, and just kind of keep up to date on. But the massive collection of everything that you can just go in and find, it starts to push the limits of what's really practical with something like this. So that's part of the reason why we tried this, is to say, could we do it? Could it be useful? If we put it out there, will people use it? If we build it, will they come? And so I'm not quite sure yet what the best way to use this is. And I'm curious if there are other projects doing similar things or trying to do similar things, keep a shared online group. I mean, obviously Zotero has a bunch of groups. I don't know how many, but people are doing it. Research groups are doing it. I'm not sure beyond that, how exactly to use it.
So one of the questions I think I had when we were thinking about how this would move forward would be like how this would either, work within or not duplicate like the resource library that Michael built. And then I guess the only reason why I ask is because I don't, at least in my experience so far, I don't think the size of that resource library has deterred people at all. If anything, I think it allows them to ask us a more informed question, right? Because like if they're like, oh, we typed in pediatrics and I couldn't find what I was looking for, here's what I'm trying to find. It's allowed us to, it's sort of been more fruitful than some of the folks that haven't done it. And I think the reason why I wanted to send the link is, Jonathan, because at the very least, I think it'd be helpful to know like how many more we have than what Michael had sent you, because I know that we've done some updates on ours. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, just thinking off of that, I've been wondering if there's an archive date that we need on ours, but is there a way that we can use these together, so that like on ours, there's a featured resources tab that I haven't got to operationalize yet that Andrew was trying to build in. And I think to your point, Jonathan, it's like the 50 that everybody would want to be able to find really quickly. And so I was just kind of curious if you could share your thinking on that, slash if anybody else has any positive or negative thoughts on a positive front-facing one, because I don't know, to your point, I guess I would say the last thing is we could design our search tab separately. So that's what we've been talking about. Right now, it's not keyword based. It's really especially based off of these categories. So you should be typing in the categories you see. But we've been wondering, would it become even more functional if we switched it to like a Google browser-based keyword search? And so I know Zotero actually you can do that in the coding, a lot of the citation apps.
Well, so a couple of thoughts on that. The shared problem here is how to get people, well, one of the shared problems is how to get people information about telehealth, research-based information, or at least printed information about telehealth. And so there's a matter of the search function. How do you help people find what they need? And Zotero, in my experience, is not terribly good at that. You use you use online databases, PubMed and Google Scholar and others to find stuff. Or a front end like this, you could say, okay, here are telehealth resources. If I'm not familiar with PubMed, if this is all I know about research in telehealth, then I might go here and put in some search terms and see what comes back and think, oh, okay, that's really cool. And be able to find stuff that then, if I just need the information, then great, I have the information. Now, if I want to, what Zotero is structured for is academic paper production, like citing stuff. So if I wanted to now I found this thing, okay, this is great, this is the information I need. If what I'm going to do with this is, okay, it looks like our project is going to work, I'm going to go to my team and I'm going to say, hey, somebody else has done this, it worked, and so now let's go. Zotero is useless to me. Once I have the information, that's all I need. Now, if what I'm doing is putting together a paper of cited sources and I need it organized in a certain way and I'm going to submit it to a journal and all that, well, then I need a way to quickly do that, to write a paper and to be able to put in a quick code. And Zotero handles everything about citing it and making my bibliography and putting my reference in there in a compliant format. If you've ever written a research paper and you know about citing with APA format or some other kind of format, library medicine format, it'll do all of that very simply. And it integrates with Microsoft Word, it integrates with Google Docs. So you can just be typing along in a Google Doc, hit a cheat code, a little list comes up, I say I want to cite that paper, and it'll put the citation right in there, Neufeld et al., 1996, and it goes on. And you can just keep typing. And it's so much easier than note cards. But that's what Zotero is designed to do. But the question is, I don't know how many of our clients that's what they need to do. So that's why I guess I'm just not sure whether or not this is the best way, whether or not something like Zotero is the best way to store our shared repository of research articles. I don't know. I mean, somebody could go through this the same way they go through, Michael's list and just kind of look down at authors and such. And you can search this too, just by searching in here. But dang. Beyond that, so I don't know. I don't know if it can, how well it would do things like, yeah, so there's a resource somebody might use.
I know him. Jonathan, I understand what you're saying. I use Mendeley And Mendeley, actually, I just Googled it real quick. You know, they do have a way to interface this, but and I know exactly what you're saying, but I have to tell you that when I'm looking at your database here, I'm kind of drooling. Like, I wish I would like to have access to this, just because I understand the process of doing the research, you know, and then learning, and then I always have to do that anyway. But having a look at some of these things, especially, you know, like what Kathy was saying, I can see easily that this puts it in your title, you know, it has the years, and that's the things that I'm always looking for. So I would look for like the latest thing, then I would look for their references. So it would help me even to start my research. So I just look at this and I see how yours is way more built out than what we were doing, you know, in terms of just collection of articles. And of course the Northeast collection also, I often refer to that. So in terms of a resource for us as TRC or as academics or as whatever, very, very, very useful. I definitely agree. And I was trying to figure out, you know, I'm getting a new grad student this coming semester. And so we'll have some resources where trying to figure out what's the best use of her time in this effort. And if we have some of us who have that kind of resources, maybe we can coordinate. But I do agree with you exactly. I think you explained it perfectly, because that's what I struggle with as well. This is not the listing of all articles in mHealth, right? But it is what we found, and it can help to launch your search.
Well, and I suppose to that point, Christina, there's not one of the things that I think is a benefit to the way Zotero is organized is that, as I was saying before, this library is like everything, and then these are collections. So you can open a new collection here. If you have you can't do it in the web, but if you have the desktop client, you can open a new collection. And let's say I'm going to do a specific search for, you know, mHealth applications in Pacific Islands, whatever. And I find a few articles. You add those in, and they become part of one of the resources of the library, but they're in your collection. But they're in both places, you know. So then you can point people to it and say, oh, I did this search. I found these articles. They're in that folder, in that collection online, and then people can have access to them. Or they can download Zotero on their own desktop and link to it, and it'll sync up, and then they'll have all those collections. So it's as much a way of sharing the work that we do as it is of sharing what we found. You know, it's like I gathered this pile of sticks, and you can link to it, and now we both can have the same pile of sticks, whatever. Yeah, bad metaphor.
Yeah, I would echo the things that Christina said, because like I see completely two different uses for this versus what Michael has. I mean, Michael is much more on the consumer TA side of things, but whereas this, like Christina, I would have been drooling over this, because I just worked on 2 textbook chapters this past 6 months, and I would have loved to have been able to just like click on references and have them add to those articles. And I suspect we all do a little bit of writing at different times, and so, you know, to be able to have those references at hand and formatted would be a godsend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which it always amazes me that these tools aren't more widely known and widely used, especially Zotero, because it is like the people who do this, if you've ever worked with librarians, you know how just wonderfully helpful they are. And these are the geekiest and most technically savvy group of librarians, and they've made just an incredible tool. When I saw it show up on the Google Docs menu bar, I thought, oh my goodness, Zotero's taken over the world, because that is not a place I would have expected them to integrate, but they did. And I haven't tested it out, but I have every reason to believe that it works just fine.
So I wonder, so first off, yes, I love this too, and I love the fact that it formats the references. How nice is that? But my question is, I wonder, internally, there seems to be a problem when someone publishes a new paper and collecting it into, you know, that platform. I'm wondering if there's a way to use Zotero in this method, but also like to, when someone publishes a paper, if they could just add it in here directly. Do you know what I'm saying? If there's a way to do that, I don't know if you've come across any of that kind of use case.
Well, I mean, authors could do that, but they don't typically. I mean, the journal publishes a database. It's PubMed, or it's Psych Abstracts, or it's whatever. Those are the databases, and it would be up to us or a graduate student or whoever to get the current version of all the journals that we think are telehealth related, or do a Google search, Google Scholar ongoing search of, new publications in telehealth, and sort out some of the chaff. But anything that's worthwhile, with a couple of clicks, it would be in here. Zotero can get all the information, all the fields. Nobody has to type anything. You find it on the web and click, and it's in here. But somebody has to do that clicking.
Yes. So I think, so in my case, what pops its ugly little head every once in a while is to do a report on our specific team and what they've published. So if you go out to like PubMed, you have to go to the different sources or what have you to go and do this. Now this could facilitate that process and make it a lot easier as long as everything's already in here, it sounds like.
It could.
Right?
Sure.
But it's getting, that's the hard part. It's going to the people who are writing all these papers, right? Getting it into one database. I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but we struggle with it.
If you wanted to, and this is, and some of this I recognize is getting a little far afield from the TRC grant and the TRCs and what we do, but because some of us, we're working in academic centers, and so we have similar kind of problems we want to solve. I'd be happy to sit down with people who wanted to learn how to do that and show you how what you could do with, the thing of it is, if you do it in Word or whatever, you've got a Word doc, and then later you want to use it somewhere else, you can copy and paste into a new Word doc and change it and everything. If you do it in Zotero, it's always there, and it's a matter of just kind of downloading the updated bibliography, and it's always formatted. It just seems to me a much safer and better way to do it. And it would be a matter of, making a folder for, shoot, forgot but anyway, a folder of all the people, folder of saying, our team's publications, and then sliding all those publications in from wherever, and then they sit there and you update them as necessary. And then whenever you need to make a report, you just click on that folder, select that folder, and pull down the reference list, and however you want it, format it however you want it, and it'll give you it'll put it on the clipboard, or it'll give it to you in Word format or whatever you want.
Right.
To answer Wendy's question also, this probably has the feature, but for Mendeley, if I search an author and the author published something, I think they will push it out to me. I know like Jonathan said, if there's topics that you searched, and I clicked some function in Mendeley, and so anytime there's something on telehealth that's newly published, I get an email from Mendeley with that article. So there's probably something like that. Yeah.
Wow, that's a nice feature, Christina, that it sends you that notification.
Yeah, I have to double check because I wasn't sure if it was ResearchGate that does it, because ResearchGate also does it. Like if you...
Yeah, I get ResearchGate.
Yeah, so...
The well, and Google Alerts we've used a lot too for a while, that do a pretty good job of searching popular literature anyway. I don't have anything set up in the academic literature. Yeah, yeah.
When you did the search earlier, did you put in Hawaii? Is that why the author came up that I knew, or did you just randomly search?
Oh no, I just randomly clicked some stuff. Yeah.
This is crazy because I have to tell you, the author was actually the best man at my wedding. And so I thought, oh, you put in Hawaii, not big deal, but it is a big deal if you just randomly searched in this big.
That's pretty good. No, that was just, what was I? It was like school-based or whatever, yeah. And just caught my eye. I have to admit too that I don't spend much time in Zotero at all. In fact, I don't spend much time citing references anymore. I mean, it comes up every now and then, and I work on it for a while with regard to some project, but I don't count myself an expert. I just feel fairly confident that the folks at Zotero are going to stay on the leading edge of how to organize this for academics, for publication. They're not at the forefront of search necessarily, but certainly I think they're doing a good side and a good job of integrating into publications. So I feel like if I can keep in touch with them and see where they are going and learn to use that tool, that I'll have a skill set that I can use anywhere. And I wouldn't bother me at all if we started, a subgroup of, TRC collections, and then under those collections, if you want to do something, you put a folder there, find the citations you want, and slide them into that folder, and just use it as a centralized way of doing that. If you were going to do that, you would want to run the desktop version, not the web version. The web version is just too clunky for that. But the desktop version is pretty sweet once it syncs up. The first sync, if any of you go out and try and do this and download and sync up and get an article, or get an account and try and sync it up, for the first 5 minutes while it's syncing, your computer is just worthless. Don't try and do anything else. Walk away, get something to drink, because it's going to just sync. And then once it's up to date, then it's a little less troublesome. All right. Well, anything else?
Thank you, Jonathan. I thought this was great.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. And to your point, Reed, yeah, I don't know if there's a way to connect them up.
That's what I was gonna say. The only thing, thank you for doing this. The only thing I think that would be cool is if you do chat with them or read about it a little more, and you find something or you want to test something with us, let us know, because I think that would make it even easier if it was something that you could put resource library or whatever, and it's just pulling from there, and then we could tag them as a group or something like that. That's the process of having to finish setting up our own citation manager. We were looking at Mendeley too, but that's just for my grad school preference. Right.
Well, and one thing that does come to mind, I mean, since Michael is continually working and updating these collections, so the work of finding new stuff is being done. Certainly then, I mean, what we got was the current status, and so Amelia had to just enter in all these 1,000 articles. Getting 20 or 30 at a time is a much smaller chunk and a much more manageable chunk to just kind of keep up to date. And if we wanted to do something like that, it wouldn't be hard for somebody to do, and we could just kind of monitor, after a year, is it worth our time? Is anybody using it? Is it worthwhile? And for those for whom it's a value, then we can maintain it if it's worth that. So any of you who want access, send me an email. I'll forward it on. We'll figure out how to get you on. I didn't walk everybody through that because, frankly, I can't remember exactly the process, but it's not hard. Send me an email and we'll figure out how to get you up and connected.
Great, thank you.
All right, I think that's it.
All right, thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Take care.
Thanks, all.